Accordingly, the financial world had a complete and utter collapse in 2025. Anyone keeping tabs on the cryptocurrency market knows that this isn't your average market cycle. An entire generation has changed roles. Moves like these don't merely make people rich, they build civilizations. And at this very moment, the very banks who were so quick to belittle, downplay, and bury cryptocurrency are suddenly racing to be the first in line, eager to get in on the action. Money advice is not what this is. First, we'll go over what happened earlier this year. A bombshell was dropped by the OC on March 7th. You are officially cleared to get involved with crypto activities, they told banks plainly, cutting out the middleman. It was enormous in and of itself. However, when May 7th came around, they redoubled their efforts. Not only can you touch crypto, you can handle custody and trading services too. In essence, they extended an invitation for the whole US banking, with the most well-known banks. Believe me when I say that you will comprehend the reason behind this conflict once you grasp the magnitude of what is at stake. Now, before I delve further, let me to briefly introduce you to something that has the potential to revolutionize your investment strategy. I have provided you with the link to the definitive guide to becoming a billionaire investor in the pinned comment. Locate stocks with a 100x return. A PDF isn't all this is. It's an all-inclusive set of documents, images, videos, and more that will teach you the precise steps that the greatest wealth builders of all time took to identify possibilities just before they blew up. Here's the kind of data that makes a difference. If you want to know how to transform modest investments into wealth that lasts generations, seize it in the pinned comment immediately before it's gone. Remember that you can obtain NVDA shares worth up to $200 for free
when you deposit just $1 through my Robinhood link. Now let's return to Ripple. Ripple continues to face criticism despite the crypto industry's recent regulatory victories. You'd think things would settle down now that the OC, FDIC, and Fed have all given their approval to crypto. Instead, Ripple continues to take a beating. Why? For the simple reason that Ripple is requesting a banking license. Yes, I understand. Applying to become a full-blown bank puts Ripple squarely in the middle of the beast, the very corporation the SEC spent years trying to drag through court. Quite a significant matter. They're fighting for more than simply survival in the U.S. They intend to dominate. They intend to revolutionize the flow of capital domestically and internationally. Naturally, though, there was instant resistance. Chief Executive Officer of the Digital Chamber, Cody Carbone, has recently released a video denouncing this. He drew a parallel between redlining in the modern era and stated, "Crypto companies are still being debanked, and it has to stop." Financial institutions used to discriminate against customers on the basis of their race or geographic location. This is now playing out in the realms of technology and politics. Just shut off your access to the banking system if regulators don't approve of you. Companies dealing with firearms, petroleum, and natural gas, Trump Enterprises, and cryptocurrency. They have been placed on the blacklist one by one. That is the reason why Senator Scott's strong stance is so effective. Banks can no longer use reputational risk as a reason to reject enterprises. There is already support for the bill in the House from both parties. Nothing here is trivial. The process is progressing, but now things start to get crazy. Some 42 financial institutions are attempting to obstruct Ripple's banking license, despite the fact that the OC, FDIC, and Fed are all on board. This isn't some sort of plot. This has been recorded. Those 42 financial institutions have recently had their formal objections submitted by the Bank Policy Institute, BPI. And these credit unions aren't like the ones in your little town. This includes Citibank, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Goldman Sachs. This boils down to the gang of large banks that have monopolized the currency market for many years. Plus, they're scared to death that Ripple's product would make it impossible for them to make money off of you. At this time, individuals are being robbed by the conventional system. Regardless of the transfer, overdraft, or delay, when you transfer your own money with them, there are fees. Their entire model is based on that. Nevertheless, Ripple's technology turns that on its head. Quick and easy payouts, no exorbitant costs. Quickly settle global disputes. The whole game shifts in an instant if Ripple obtains.
That license. No longer is the BPI the only one. Over 5,000 banks were represented by the Independent Community Bankers of America, ICBA, which also lodged complaints. Regulators should reject Ripple's Trust Bank Charter. They're urging regulators to do so. Why? Reason being, Ripple's proposal is excessively revolutionary, powerful, and disruptive. The planned opening of Ripple National Trust Bank will allow Ripple to manage reserves for its RLUSD stablecoin, as well as conduct blockchain payments and custody services. The ICBA claims this exceeds Congress's intent for a trust bank charter, but their real fear is the technology's revolutionary efficiency. Let that sink in. Even to accept deposits, Ripple has not applied. It is against the terms of this charter to do so. Stablecoin reserves and blockchain payments are their main areas of concentration. However, the system is still rattled by it. Why? The very process that banks rely on to make a
Profit would be undermined if Ripple were to construct this payout is sluggish and costs tons. Now, for the most bizarre part, the banks in question have come out and said that Ripple's innovations are too revolutionary. Ripple's goal has the potential to radically alter the global monetary system, which they acknowledge in their own documents. That is not an alarmist statement. That proves it, and you should be excited about that. It should be clear what the large banks in America are trying to accomplish by their intense opposition to Ripple. Isn't it obvious that you're staring at the technology that completely changes the game? However, the thing that really piques my attention is this. Even if the BPI and ICBA are exerting tremendous effort to obstruct Ripple's trust bank charter, the momentum is turning against them. There will be no more sneaky stifling of innovation by these banks. Those days are over. Everyone is watching this right now. Regulators, lawmakers, and even major media are beginning to catch on to what's happening. And let's face it, Ripple has changed a lot since the SEC onslaught in 2020. They had just begun construction and were still battling for credibility. With enterprise clients all around the globe, Ripple has grown into a formidable global powerhouse. Today, Fortune 500 corporations, payment processors, and central banks are among their partners. Their technology has already been demonstrated to be effective. Therefore, Ripple isn't just some upstart trying to get a national trust bank license. Already, this business has secured partnerships with non-U.S. institutions, transferred billions of dollars across borders, and established a solid coin environment that authorities desire. That is precisely why there is such a strong resistance. The inefficiency of Ripple is something these financial institutions are well aware of. Quick payment is not something they can provide. Eliminating the fees would result in the demise of their own sources of income. They have little choice but to influence authorities, delay Ripple, and hold out hope that the old system holds on for a little longer. However, your efforts will be in vain because in reality, society has progressed beyond that point. At an unstoppable pace, Ripple is integrating into financial systems across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. The international community isn't going to wait around for Ripple to slow down domestically. Even if U.S. banks are successful, there will be no turning back for the United States once the international norm is established. Evaluate the launch of the internet from your memory. Businesses and governments initially resisted. People thought it was just a passing trend. It was too risky, they said. Their argument was that it was hopeless. Everyone now felt the pressure to play catch-up as soon as adoption reached a critical mass.
Abroad. XRP and Ripple are experiencing just that at the moment. Ironically, the bank's actions are strengthening the case for Ripple. They continue to demonstrate their menacing nature, with each attempt to debank crypto firms, objection they lodge, and push against innovation. They are openly declaring that Ripple poses a threat to their business model. What exactly is Ripple creating with this trust bank? Let's take a closer look. Their RLUSD stablecoin is built to be completely transparent and backed by all necessary assets. Ripple possesses the necessary infrastructure and regulatory contacts to execute this well, setting it apart from other stablecoin players. Businesses, governments, and other significant organizations may put their faith in Ripple's stablecoin because of this. Envision now that Ripple National Trust Bank is in charge of the assets' custody. Just think of how open and honest they would be with their reserve. management compared to more conventional banks. That's groundbreaking, not merely disruptive. Everyone else will have no choice but to change because of that move. The timing is also important to consider. The stablecoin market is on the cusp of becoming a financial industry powerhouse. Demand is going to explode as the US government shows its support for stablecoin legislation. Businesses will require reliable third parties to manage compliance, payments, and custody. As such, Ripple is setting itself up to be that collaborator. At the same time, what services do banks provide? The same antiquated method that was ineffective in 2008. You know, the one that slaps you with a $35 overdraft fee. The same one that causes international money transfers to take 3 days. There is a faster, cheaper, and more transparent option. Do you honestly believe that system will survive? Now for the exciting part. Crypto banking was recently legalized by the same authorities that banks are relying on to derail Ripple. Those announcements made in March and May by the OC, the FDIC, and the Fed were not made in vain. They have a good idea of the outcome. In their minds, digital money is the wave of the future. Their ban on Ripple will eventually expire. Two eras are colliding here. Opposing the new system that is being constructed before our own eyes is the old guard attempting to maintain control. We can see the inevitable outcome of this from history. Time and again, the new system triumphs. Take a look at the history of the bank. PayPal continued unabated. Venmo was unstoppable. Cash App and Square were unstoppable. Bitcoin continued unabated. When they resist change, they always end up losing. Additionally, Ripple isn't your average software or payment gateway. For the emerging Internet of Value, Ripple serves as an essential component. Nothing like that has ever been seen before. It's several orders of magnitude larger. The mental side of things is what we need to discuss now. Lobbies against Ripple by banking institutions like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are about more than simply money. Fear is driving their behavior. Uncertainty about letting go. Anxieties about a future where they aren't in charge. Embrace the power to stay relevant. The strongest indicator that the disturbance is real is fear, especially when it's this intense, because, let's face it, they wouldn't give a hoot if Ripple wasn't a danger. Lobbyists wouldn't be a squandering of their funds. They would not rally groups such as the BPI and the ICBA. They would not encourage regulators to take such strong action. You can tell they're serious about this because they're doing it. Consider how lyrical this is as well. Ripple was said to be too bank-friendly, too centralized, and too corporate to ever be a real cryptocurrency project. For a long time, it was ridiculed by Bitcoin maximalists. Many felt it had no chance of success. Still, here we are with Ripple, a revolutionary technology that the world's biggest banks view as their number one adversary. The whole story is turned upside down by it. Simply put, banks would be happy to accept Ripple if it were completely benign and no different from any other centralized project. It would be co-opted rather than crushed. Their efforts to conceal it demonstrate how detrimental Ripple's technology is to their business model, which no one wanted to acknowledge. And this is where no one is bringing up the subject. The victory is already theirs regardless of the rejection of Ripple's Trust Bank application. Why? For the simple reason that the objections have been made public. The fear of Ripple among these large financial organizations is plain to perceive. There's evidence you can't deny. That proves the disruption is happening. Also, Ripple is still actively expanding its reach around the world. Agreements with Asian financial centers, collaborations with African remittance firms, and integration with European governing bodies. This is no longer limited to the United States. There is a worldwide scope to this. US financial institutions will have no choice but to accept the global system once it is operational. By all means, make them join it. In other words, this isn't your average regulatory fight. An old monopoly has collapsed. A system that has persisted for more than 100 years is now being dismantled. With Ripple as its focal point, it is occurring simultaneously and in real time. This becomes very clear when you step back even farther. This is the appearance of every significant historical change, the invention of printing, the web, and mobile phones. At initially, the established powers put up a fierce resistance. Obstacles are put up by them. Dangers are what they yell out. Their goal is to eliminate it through legislation. But as soon as it reaches an unstoppable level of strength, people rush to embrace it. Right now, Ripple and XRP are in the exact same position. Fights are breaking out. Even though the assaults never stop, the momentum will eventually overcome them. With each bank battle, the impending doom of this system becomes more apparent. In a recent post, Nick Blackwood had it spot on. The individual mentioned that Ripple Band is what they are looking for. Therefore, you have successfully surpassed the aim. I couldn't agree more. They know they can't compete with you when they pour millions of dollars into trying to bring you down. Plus, Ripple isn't going anywhere. Their whole strategy is based on reimagining the flow of currency in an online economy. The financial institution's whole system collapses if they are successful. Consider the implications for investors at this point. There is a precise pressure point, and the banks are indicating it. Attempts to demonetize unrelated cryptocurrency are not their top priority. Ripple is their main concern. XRP is their main concern. Their bottom line is directly affected by the XRP PPL ecosystem, which is why they are focusing on it. Here, Ripple turns that on its head. Rather of waiting 3 days for a settlement, you might expect it almost immediately. You get pennies instead of exorbitant remittance fees. With a blockchain ledger, you can see exactly where your money is at all times. Unlike with opaque systems, that is the true danger that they face, not us. It will become more apparent as time goes on. Globally, Ripple still has plenty of room to grow, even if it encounters resistance in the US. Different nations do not have the same burdens. They aren't backed by billion-dollar financial interests that want to stay in power. They're much more likely to embrace functional technology. That is the reason behind Ripple's massive international expansion thus far. Imagine for a second that we are in the year 2008. A wake-up call. It was not. The world financial crisis was more than that. It shone a bright light on the system's flaws. Banks manipulated customers' funds. They staked the life savings of others. They were rescued when everything fell apart. Common folks, they saw their houses, jobs, and retirement funds evaporate. Finally, the banks could see the light. They are rescued regardless of how careless they are. Here we are in the present day. Ripple is a terrifying prospect to those very same institutions. Oh, and how lovely. Those responsible for the last crisis are now understandably terrified of being completely powerless. This is the perfect moment for a huge upheaval, and there's no denying that disruptions always appear disorganized at first. However, the resistance is largely forgotten by history. The breakthrough is remembered by history. Plus, Ripple is located in the sweet spot where pressure, energy, and resistance all come together. That's encouraging. You couldn't ask for a better signal than that because you know you've hit the jackpot when banks go to such lengths to shut something down. You are aware that the innovation is too significant to disregard. For that reason, the battle over Ripple's banking license is crucial. The fact that they face such formidable opposition demonstrates that the technology is truly revolutionary. Regardless of the outcome, no one, not even the detractors, can deny that fact. For example, consider the Bitcoin maximalists who have derided XRP for a long time. They predicted it would fail miserably. Their position was that it could never compete with Bitcoin. However, this is the truth. The world's largest banks aren't wasting resources trying to stop Bitcoin. Ripple is their enemy. They're opposed to XRP. They're plotting against the XRP PPL. And that should be enough information for you. In a wider view, the pattern becomes apparent. You win when they ignore you, mock you, fight you, and then ultimately give up. The first 3 steps have been completed by Ripple. Now that the battle has begun, the victor is closer than anyone is willing to acknowledge. Now this is where things start to heat up. Pretend for a second that Ripple manages to get that banking license. Envision the Ripple National Trust Bank servicing as a custodian for digital assets, overseeing RLUSD reserves, and driving chain-based global payments. That isn't your average bank. The United States system is actually constructing an entirely new financial infrastructure. When that occurs, the rate of adoption skyrockets. In addition, XRP's demand will surge as adoption rates soar. At the moment, that is the configuration we are considering: persistent pressure, pervasive resistance, and unstoppable momentum. Finally, Ripple isn't going to be compared to any other cryptocurrency startup. In this new age of finance, they are fundamental. If Ripple wasn't a serious threat, why would the world's largest banks invest so much in attempting to restrict it? They would not have rallied groups representing more than 5,000 institutions if the issue were insignificant. If they weren't determined to impede Ripple's progress, why would they take the chance of attracting attention to it? There is an easy way to explain it. Reason being, they are secretly aware that Ripple is legit. You should also know it if they do. So it's crucial to pay attention, dive in, and take this understanding of how these changes offer opportunities very seriously right now. This type of seismic shift has the potential to create not only waves but fortunes when it strikes the financial system. And now we arrive to this. Read the definitive guide to becoming a wealthy investor if you are serious about setting yourself up for success in the future. Locate 100x stocks in the comment that has been pinged below. It's jam-packed with tactics, papers, images, and videos that will teach you how to identify the possibilities that will transform your modest investments into a fortune that will change your life. Remember that you can obtain NVDA shares worth up to $200 for free when you deposit just $1 through my Robinhood link. Here is an opportunity to gain visibility without breaking the bank by partnering with NVIDIA, one of the world's leading artificial intelligence companies. In the pinned comment, you'll find both URLs. We have reached a tipping point. Fighting with banks isn't a weakness on Ripple's part. It demonstrates power. It gets more apparent the more they